happen, Joe, if half of Americans were in bomb shelters as missiles were flying into your cities? What do you think you would want your government to do?
I'd be really fucking happy that we have bomb shelters. But of course, the people, the human beings in Gaza do not have bomb shelters. They have nothing. Again, the conversation is never, ever, ever about the humanity of the civilians that are under Israeli occupation. Ever. This is two dudes with the same point of view jerking one another off and deflecting away from the main point of contention. God damn, dude.
That's why the people of Israel are united in order to exact such a heavy price. Look,
this is a good question. Why should an Israeli care who is being attacked? Honest question. Why should an Israeli person care? Well, one, humanity and morality. I am an American citizen. I'm horrified and disgusted by our actions and speak out against it regularly. You probably should too, unless you're like literally a fucking psychopathic, bloodthirsty freak. Okay, so that's one. Two, even from a pragmatic point of view, this conflict only ends either after you wipe out every single fucking Palestinian with the hopes that there are no other like guerrilla terror organizations that form that want vengeance, okay? Just so full-blown ethnic cleansing, which never ends up well. You will never be able to successfully do it, okay? Which is seemingly what Israel is trying to do currently, or doing currently, okay? Or you try to end the conflict through peace. Ending the conflict through peace means giving Palestinians a voice, ending the occupation, allowing them to have equal rights as citizens. Except no one wants that. Israelis do not want that. I'm sorry. And that's why whenever I bring this up, people are like, are you crazy? These people want to murder us. Well, maybe they wouldn't want to fucking murder you if instead of sending bombs into the fucking prison that you have created for them, you built roads and hospitals and schools. Maybe then they wouldn't want to fucking murder you. I'm just saying, that's a pretty good start. Does people take Hassan seriously? He over-exaggerates everything people he don't like to and underplays what people he like does. Super obvious. Thank you. You are a liar and idiot. You talk as like Hamas care about the Palestinian people. They are not. You are lie. You are idiot. You are liar. You are still liar to your audience. Dude. You are liar. Still liar. To your audience. You are a Weasley little liar. Yes, they want to murder all the Jews and don't believe in Israel's existence. That one of Hamas's ideas. Yeah, Hamas, a fringe militant group that the Palestinians are stuck with, believes that. And luckily, they have no power and no weapons and nothing in general in comparison to the IDF's position and the Israeli position overall, the Israeli government's position overall, which manifests in the form of bombing fucking Palestinian buildings where citizens live, okay? So again, we keep going back to the same point over and over again. We keep going back to the same point over and over again. This motherfucker is literally telling you, like, he talks in the exact same way that Hamas does. But the difference is, one side gets legitimacy and mainstream coverage all the fucking time. The other side has nothing and also no voice. So, if you think the IDF's actions are justifiable, then say it with your fucking chest that, like, Hamas is justifiable too. I think neither side's actions are justifiable, but that's just me. But certainly, if there was supposedly a morality playing field for morality here, Hamas's actions would be more justifiable than the IDF's actions. Because ultimately, they are being occupied. Not saying that their actions are justifiable. They're not. You cannot kill or try to kill innocent civilians. Okay? But that's at the heart of my criticism against Israel's actions. Okay? So we should all accept Hamas's bombings and attacks? No, but you can say that Hamas's bombings and attacks are terrible and wrong, but that's not what people are saying. If you end the conversation there, then you're a piece of shit. If you end the conversation at like, Hamas is wrong, Israel has a right to defend itself, you're an even bigger piece of shit. You're an even bigger piece of shit because then you're defending Israel's actions. A lot of people try to act like they have a moral playing field here, where they're coming at this from a morality point of view, and that's why they're against like Hamas. When in fact, the real reason is because you just want this bombing, or you don't care that the bombing is continuing, as long as it's like Israeli bombs blowing up Palestinian buildings. Okay? And the problem always will be the same consistent issue in every Middle Eastern country, in every area of conflict. The people cannot liberate themselves from an oppressive government or an oppressive organization when they're too busy fending for themselves and fighting for their lives. So if you want to end the scourge of Hamas, then stop bombing Palestinians. Stop murdering Palestinians. Work to better their lives. I'm going to start banning people that just say just curious going forward.
Many Israelis want to do more than Israel is doing now.
Shocking post on Twitter the other day to Hamas, basically the government of Palestine. There's two different branches here. You have the militant branch of Hamas, and then you have the whatever stands for the Gazan government of Hamas. So yes, they are basically the government for the Gaza Strip. Okay? That's not incorrect. That's why I always use my words carefully. And I tell you that the people of Palestine are stuck between the Palestinian Authority on the occupied West Bank with Mahmoud Abbas, who is defanged and also is corrupt himself, versus on the Gaza Strip, the only fucking kind of governance they have and the only like authority that they have there is Hamas. So they're just stuck and they can't even fucking do elections regardless. Last time motherfuckers voted for anybody was in 2006, or was it 2007? They don't have a standing army. They don't have a police force. They have nothing. They have absolutely nothing.
Much more than Israel's doing now. But we have to think about if tomorrow we go into...
And the people who say, well, they elected Hamas, right? Dog, we elected Donald Trump. Should they Okay, we elected Donald Trump. Should Pakistan nuke us? Should we all fucking die then? We elected Donald Trump. Is that how these things work? Is that how you see the world? Fuck, the UK elected Boris Johnson. Nuke that too. Sorry. Not a single country would be alive with that mentality. Except, the difference here is we have the capacity to understand nuance when it comes to Western nations, but we do not have the capacity for nuance when it comes to a country or a group of individuals like Palestinians who are seen as like fringe and radical and all of them are terrorists and blah, blah, blah as a consequence of ongoing propaganda.
Gaza, if you conquer Gaza, what do you, and you can destroy Hamas. We have the military capability to do that. But what do you do the day after? What do you do with 2 million Palestinians the day after? We don't want to be in Gaza. I remember, Joe, in 2005, Israel withdrew all of its military forces from Gaza.
God damn, bro. He is breathing so heavy. He's horny.
Uprooted 17 settlements in Gaza, took 10,000 Jews out of Gaza. We have no desire to be in Gaza. But Hamas took over that territory and has used it as a launching pad against our civilians. And no government will accept this.
Yeah, well, and again, Mr. Ambassador, we know each other personally. I know you watch the show enough to know I recognize all of that. I also recognize, though, Richard Haas, I know you've got the next question, Richard Haas, that Hamas has been strengthened politically in the West Bank. You have a corrupt Palestinian Authority where a president's going on the 17th year of a 4-year term that is seen as corrupt. And now this has actually done nothing but revive Hamas's political fortunes.
Mr. Ambassador, I also wanted to raise another group of 2 million people, not the 2 million inhabitants of Gaza, but the 2 million Israeli Arabs. And it seems to me Israel is facing this external challenge from Gaza, and I actually think Joe is right. However much you degrade Hamas militarily, you're arguably strengthening them politically vis-a-vis the Palestinian Authority. But what is Israel going to do to quiet the domestic turmoil, the intercommunal violence? You've got 2 million Israeli Arabs who increasingly feel they are second-class citizens. The prime minister clearly opposes their...
I can't wait for him to be like, well, those guys are also fighting back against fucking, Israeli Jews. There's a lot of militancy there, so that's also... involvement
in the coalition government. What do you say to them? Well, how do you prevent them from getting further radicalized?
Oh, my God. Oh, my God. Oh, my God. The way that this question is set up is to literally make it seem like they too are Hamas, dude. Fucking end me, okay? That is like, well, how can we stop them from becoming spies for Hamas? Which they probably are, by the way. So, like, how do we deal with the fucking scourge of Israeli Arabs, dude? What are we gonna do about these Israeli Arabs, bro? They might be Hamas too. You better watch out, dude.
Well, I don't think that's true regarding the prime minister, but we can put that aside for a second. There's no question that this was a major issue and deeply disturbing last week when you saw violence between Arabs and Jews within Israel.
I love the manufactured conflict here. Like, they're literally on the same side of the argument, and they're debating on, like, how much should we murder the Palestinians? Like, how much Palestinian murder is justifiable? And one side is like all of it, and the other side is like, well, what about more than, expand your mind. Expand your mind a little bit. Like, you're thinking too narrow on this conflict. You're thinking about, like, just the Palestinians living in Gaza. Why don't you expand your mind into the Israeli Arabs, for example? That's great. We're going
Israeli
too small.
Arabs
we got to go big. We got to think big.
And we had a situation a few days ago where you had sort of an Arab mob that went into a Jewish city, lynched someone, and then in response, you
called it. Fucking called it. Literally called it. Did I not tell you he was going to say, oh, well, it's the fucking, they want to kill all the Israeli Jews? Did I not fucking call it? Oh my God. The Arab mob, they are dangerous as well.
You also had Jewish gangs that went in and lynched an Arab, and it ripped at the fabric of Israeli society, where our vision of Israel as a Jewish and democratic state is to ensure that our Israeli Arab citizens, which, as Richard said, is 20% of our population, it's 2 million Israeli Arabs, that they will be integrated into the country. And what's interesting about what has happened in the last year is that you've actually seen an increase, a palpable increase in the pace of integration of Israeli Arabs into Israeli society. You saw that during the COVID response, where if you go to Israeli hospitals, you'll see doctors and nurses and, of course, paramedics, and pictures seen throughout the world working together, Jews and Arabs, to fight back against COVID. And we also saw it after the Abraham Accords. We had 4 peace agreements with Arab states, and there was a great feeling in Israel that this would actually accelerate integration of Israeli Arabs. And what we saw last week,
motherfucker, those guys have that has nothing to do with your treatment of Palestinians. It's like they are already like so ready to get American weapons and shit. Like they'll do whatever. They'll keel over. Like, dude, I don't understand. Like, I don't get it. Like, we keep murdering Palestinians and like, but like all these other Arabs in fucking the UAE and Saudi Arabia are on our side. Like the governments. Like, I don't understand. Like, what do you think? Like Arabs are all fucking one hive mind or something? Like, you think all of the Muslim world is just a singular hive mind? Oh, thank God we got Mohammed bin Salman's support, dude. Or MBZ, the bin Zayed, and his support. That must mean that we're good. That must mean we're on good terms, dude. I don't understand. I don't get it, dude. They're all Muslims think the same.
Was definitely a serious setback to that. And I'm not sure that those two aren't connected, because I think most Israeli Arabs want to integrate into the country. But I think there are elements within Israeli Arab society that don't want to do it. Certainly Hamas and external elements who are radical.
My dude's saying, dude, Mohammed bin Salman does not oppose Israel, dude. What kind of pathetic fucking weirdo KSA propagandists are in my chat, dude? Saudi Arabia is allies with Israel, okay? And they have been. They have a united enemy, Iran, okay? Mohammed bin Salman will, at the very most, be like, oh, yeah, I was very critical of Israel's actions. Like, but ultimately, they have a united enemy in Iran. It is fucking insane to assume that Saudi Arabians are, or not Saudi Arabians, obviously, but the Saudi Arabian government, or whatever the fuck you would consider to be a government there, is in any shape or form, like, exactly. Saudi and UAE condemn Israel over clashes at Al-Aqsa. That's it. They're just going to be like, oh, we're very mad. But ultimately, they will straight up fucking turn around and defend Israel's actions as they have been. So strongly worded, dude. It's performative. And I see this with Erdogan too. Motherfuckers will get mad at me when I bring this shit up. And this is more so because the clashes are in an Islamic holy site, and that's why. They have to say that, or else, like, the Muslim population is going to lose their fucking shit.
Don't want the Israeli Arabs to do it. So I think that they are fanning the flames. We're doing everything that we can in order to reduce tension. We've had political leadership across the spectrum, left, right, and center, that have come out very forcefully against violence, whether it's Jews against Arabs or Arabs against Jews. The political leadership of the Israeli Arabs has not actually been so.
Bro, this is funny. This guy didn't even try, dude. Like, it's not even a fucking rebuttal. It's just like, Armenian thinks this side. Come on, you get it. Why are you defending?
So vocal. Some of their religious leadership has. We've seen a decrease in intercommunal violence over the last few days. I hope that continues.
Helene Cooper's with us and has a question. Helene.
Hi, thanks, Ambassador, and happy Shavuot today.
Thank you.
I wanted to just take a whack at just
Motherfucker looks like the Omni Man, by the way.
a
Anyway,
sort of extenuation of what Joe was asking, because I wonder just how much longer you think Israel and the Netanyahu government can survive sort of the degradation that we're seeing of the bipartisan consensus on Israel here in the United States, which a lot of this started after Bibi went and gave that address against President Obama's wishes.
that's the thing I don't understand too, is like, why do American Democrats like cape for psychopathic far-right morons in Israel? Like, it doesn't make any sense. Like, there is not a better testament to the Democratic Party like lacking any sort of like consistent principles on humanity or political ideology than straight up being an advocate for the right-wing Israeli government over and over and over again. Like, I will turn around and maybe use some reductive terms here, but it's wild to me that like, it doesn't matter, Democrats or Republicans, like, we always love the right-wing Israeli government, like, always.
To Congress against the Iran nuclear deal. You have now, during this latest crisis, you're seeing an increasing number of Democrats who are criticizing Israel and who are pressuring Israel more into ceasefire. People we hadn't seen doing this in the past. You're seeing people like Bob Menendez. You're seeing Greg Meeks. These are hardly people I would describe as the hardcore left of the Democratic
Menendez, dude.
Party. Do you worry at all that because also of the 4 years of hyper partisanship on Israel during the Trump administration, that you're in a worse position now when you look at American support than you would have been?
Literally, this entire convo is like they're running PR for the Israeli government, dude. They're like, hey, this meeting of the minds unironically reads like a bunch of PR firms got together and are briefing Netanyahu on what not to do and how to move forward in an effort to whitewash genocidal war crimes. Like, you know, it's starting to look kind of bad, Sweaty. Like, we need to focus on the optics of the situation. Not a single fucking mention in 11 minutes of coverage. Not a single fucking mention of Palestinian deaths, Palestinians as human beings, the media building that was bombed. Like, it's not like this video is from 2 weeks ago. This video is from today, this morning. They shot this video this morning, and not a single one of these fucking animals brought up any of the things that Israel did in a negative way.
Before?
Look, we're very appreciative of the strong bipartisan support that Israel has traditionally had, and we've done it with successive administrations. Both Democrats and Republicans, and on both sides of the aisle.
I honestly can't wait for, like, I haven't seen, like, the only fucking extremists are acknowledging the humanity of Palestinians takes yet. Like, I'm surprised. I'm surprised that the American media hasn't started being like, look, these guys are basically the same as Nazis, because, like, some fucking weirdo fringe Nazi that they found said, like, oh yeah, I love Palestine. Because, like, remember, in Florida, Nazis literally were waving the fucking Palestinian flag and, like, trolled a pro-Palestinian, I believe, like a pro-Palestinian fucking gathering, as though, like, literal Nazis give a fuck about Muslims.
In Congress, and we've seen very strong statements from both sides of the aisle that respect Israel's right to defend itself. And you've heard other statements from other people within the Democratic Party, mostly within the Democratic Party, that called for a ceasefire. I don't know if that means a huge shift away from Israel. They'd like to see the violence end. I have news for you, Helene. We'd like to see the violence end. But I think if they understand all the facts, if they see what's happening on the ground, I think none of those people who signed that statement, I would hope so, none of them wants Hamas to win. You know, to be for the Palestinians is not the same thing as being for Hamas. Hamas has to be seen as a political loser here. Now, Joe said before, we are strengthening Hamas politically. I disagree. I think it depends on what the world does. We're going to degrade them militarily. The question is, does anyone give Hamas gains politically? And one way they get strengthened is for people to start pressuring Israel when we're fighting against a terror organization rather than blaming Hamas. Another thing that could happen is in Jerusalem. Hamas is trying to sort of change the status quo in Jerusalem. For the international community to reinforce it, to back Israel in Jerusalem would send a strong signal to Hamas. The international...
But they are already, dude. What the fuck? Like... Bro, this is so fucking insane. Like, I honestly don't get it. Like, I said this yesterday, but I think they just want, like, Joe Biden to operate one of the fighter jets or something personally. Like, this motherfucker straight up is like, unless you kill a Palestinian child, like, are you with us or are you against us? I can't tell. You need to physically be there and, like, murder a kid. Only then will we be like, oh, you know, okay. Even then, they'll be like, you're not doing it right. You're holding back in your murder. It's crazy. It's fucking crazy.
The international community has to be partners with Israel in making clear to the Palestinians that the way of Hamas is a way of failure.
I think Israel has more UN condemnations than any other country. It's meaningless. Without America actually fucking condemning Israel, it is completely meaningless. And at this stage, I don't even know if America even condemns Israel and then that moves the needle. I don't think so. I feel like it's gotten completely out of control. I don't even know if America's condemnation, which will never come, I wonder if that would even move the needle.
Defense Minister Moshe Yaalon talking just a couple of weeks ago. Israel is going to hurt Lebanese civilians, to include kids of the family. We went through a very long discussion. We did it then. We did it in the Gaza Strip. We are going to do it in any round of hostilities in the future. That's the Defense Minister. This is the Military Chief of Staff, Benny Gantz. The next round of violence will be worse and see this suffering increase. He headed up the military assaults on Gaza the last.
He ran with that as his campaign, like literally. That was one of his ads. And speaking of ads, it's top of the hour, so I'm going to run another ad break, obviously, as you already fucking know, boys. And if you'd like to no longer see said ads, sorry. It is what it fucking is. Then all you need to do is subscribe. You can do it for $5, or you can do it for free with a Twitch Prime. Here's the fucking ad break now.
2. This is the Minister for Education in the Netanyahu government. There will never be a peace plan with the Palestinians. I will do everything in my power to make sure they never get a state. He also said, if you catch terrorists, you simply have to kill them. I've killed a lot of Arabs in my life, and there's no problem with that.
So, when people say this stuff, the difference is like, no one has to fucking sit there and support Hamas. And that's understandable. Like, not many do, okay? They can barely get enough support from the Palestinians in Gaza. But there are plenty of fucking people that support the Israeli government who say exactly the same shit. Except with the roles reversed. So what's up?
This is the Minister for Justice. Palestinians are all enemy combatants. This also includes the mothers of the martyrs. They should follow their sons. Nothing would be more just. They should go, as should the physical homes in which they raised the snakes. Otherwise, more little snakes will be raised there. That's the Israeli Minister for Justice in the last few months. The Israeli Deputy Minister for Defense. Palestinians are beasts. They are not human. The Minister for Foreign Affairs, CP Hotley, this is the last one. My position is that between the sea and the Jordan River, there needs to be one state only, the State of Israel. There is no place for any agreement of any kind that discusses the concession of Israeli sovereignty over lands conquered in 1967. Now, these are the official statements of several ministers of the current government of Israel. In one case, actually advocating genocide of all Palestinians, including children, and calling them snakes. Now, can I ask you, Taoiseach, do you not think that if we're defining terrorism, that is the language and thinking of terrorists, that it is absolutely unacceptable in civilized politics, in civilized international relations, for the heads of government of a state that we carry on normal relations with and who you met in Paris to advocate those sort of views when we know they have also led on to the deaths of thousands of Palestinians, innocent men, women and children? What have you to say, Taoiseach, about those sort of views being expressed by the Israeli government?
I mean, these motherfuckers know a thing or two about a colonial power and its devastation during an occupation. So I think that's part of the reason why Ireland, I believe, is literally the only... Ireland is straight up the only fucking, like, European nation that is it has consistently demonstrated solidarity with the Palestinian plight and Palestinian people. Let's see what our fucking American fascists are doing.
Why is the Associated Press sharing a building with Hamas? Surely these
progressive defenders of the IDF and Israel have to at least sometimes wonder why they sound exactly like Tom Cotton. Like, if you're fucking doing these, like, weird Instagram threads about how, like, actually calling Israel an occupying force is anti-Semitic sweaty, why don't you just, like, I don't know, reconsider your stance when you recognize that you are agreeing with Tom Cotton and pretty much using the same words and justifications as motherfucking Wonder Bread, fascist piece of fucking white toast Tom Cotton.
Intrepid reporters knew who their neighbors were. Did they knowingly allow themselves to be used as human shields by a U.S. designated terrorist organization? Did the AP pull its punches and decline to report for years on Hamas's misdeeds? I submit that the AP has some uncomfortable questions to answer.
Dude, this is like Tom Cotton is doing a was she asking for it to the Associated Press.
No one
pretty solid. Pretty incredible take from Thomas Cotton. I mean, what Associated Press, like, what were they wearing? Were they asking for the bombing campaign? Honestly, like, that's...
In 15 years, did no one ever say, gosh, I wonder why Hamas keeps running around our office building? Did no one in AP's leadership...
By the way, for the record, to all the progressives in here, okay, because I know a lot of fucking conservatives come in here to troll and shit, and fuck those guys. But to all the progressives who still have, like, a shred of doubt, Tom Cotton is taking the IDF's propaganda hook, line, and sinker and continuing along with it in the most logical way he could. Okay? So what's up? Without any sort of evidence or any sort of proof whatsoever, why are you? Because I know why he's doing it, because he's a fascist piece of shit. Why are you doing it? You call yourself a progressive. No proof whatsoever, no proof at all, by the way.
Think, you know, maybe we should move our people to a safer building in a better neighborhood. Under the circumstances...
What safer building? In Gaza? Where are they gonna go? They already have a base in Tel Aviv, you fucking idiot. How are you gonna cover the Gazan side without officers in Gaza? Where is he gonna move? Where could they move? Where? Out of Gaza?
I'm not sure what's worse, that the AP knew they shared a building with Hamas or that they didn't know. In 15 years, did no
I hate him.
War zone, even though no civilians had been harmed in this airstrike. Keith Olbermann called me an anti-constitution, anti-free press, racist fascist. One Slate reporter wrote that I was making deranged insinuations and going to bat against civilians in a war zone, even though no civilians had been harmed in this airstrike.
Was the AP lying stuff true? Did they actually omit visits from militias? What? No. Unless they're like actually fucking covering the Gazan side of the conflict. What the fuck are you talking about, dude? Yeah, dog, for 15 years, the Associated Press just simply was providing cover for Hamas, dude. It's crazy. You know what the funniest thing is? Like, one, Israel could not even verify it at all. I don't know where the fuck the information is. Even if they actually literally had proof that it was there, why didn't they fucking tell AP to, like, move out of that building? That's another problem. And lastly, you can't just bomb a building with media companies in it because it's a war crime. But regardless of all of that, what blows my mind in the situation is like we're not even operating with any evidence whatsoever. We're just like we're just acting like the Associated Press was, running cover for Hamas for 15 years, dude. Why? Because a government that has routinely lied to the media and also bombed the media said so. That's crazy to me. That's fucking crazy. To be able to believe these lies, you have to literally just close your eyes, plug your ears, keep screaming, and just repeat it over and over again until maybe some people will believe it.
The constant refrain of their criticism was that I was attacking the brave reporters of the Associated Press Gaza Bureau. Keith Olbermann, his top newsman, said he was shocked and horrified by an airstrike that caused no casualties. The AP's
Yeah, like that's normal, dude. Like that's a fucking normal thing that like, of course they're here. Let's watch.
Hi,
oh, Jesus Christ, that's so loud. Dude, check the coverage video about, fuck, I'm sorry about your ears. I don't know if we should watch this. I feel like it's going to be whack as fuck.
I'm John Green. This is Crash Course World History, and today we're going to talk about Israel and Palestine.
Oh yeah, I saw this too. During his speech in Dearborn, by the way, this scumbag, this geriatric fucking scumbag, had the audacity to go to Dearborn after giving $735 million worth of weapons to Israel. You motherfucker, dude. Have you no sense of decency? Like, after literally, for weeks, justifying the ethnic cleansing of Muslims and Palestinians, and then literally doing everything he can in his power to, like, let that continue, he turned around and went to the fucking Dearborn, Michigan, which is the largest, like, Muslim population in America, okay? Dearborn is significant because it houses like the largest Muslim population in America. This is like Andrew Yang trying to go to the Eid dinner after saying like Israel has a right to defend itself. It is wild to me.
And Representative Dan Kildee is a good friend. Representative Brenda Lawrence. And by the way, be careful what you say to Representative Slotkin. She knows more than you. They may be watching you. Where are you? I tease her all the time. But she's a great, great, great addition to the Congress. And Rashid Tlaib, where's Rashid?
They're launching the F-150s electric tomorrow. This is huge news. Are you saying that he shouldn't talk about something that's enormous? Motherfucker, do you not recognize that going to Dearborn, Michigan after doing what you did is still fucking disgusting? I don't give a fuck about that. Shove the F-150 electric fucking pickup in your ass, you fucking dog, okay? You dumb motherfucker, dude. Idiot.
I tell you what, Rashid, I want to say to you that...
Rashid? I think he means Rashida, right?
I admire your intellect, I admire your passion, and I admire your concern for so many other people.
Except hey, Rashid, we're still going to kill your family.
And it's from my heart, I pray that your grandmom and family...
Oh my God, he means Rashida Tlaib. Oh my God, he's literally speaking to Rashida Tlaib.
...are well. I promise you I'm going to do everything to see that they are on the West Bank. You're a fighter, and God, thank you for being a fighter.
I'm going to do everything I can to make sure your grandmother's death in the occupied West Bank is swift. Okay? That's what I'm going to do as Joe Biden. My promise to you is that when your grandmother inevitably... Or is he talking about someone else? Is he talking about Rashida Tlaib? Or is he talking about someone else? Because I feel Rashida Tlaib's grandmother lives in the occupied West Bank. So I feel like he is trying to talk about Rashida. He is, right? He's saying Rashid, so I don't fucking know.
And then 11, no, a lot of 11s. And Haley Stevens, thank you.
That's great. That's great, dude. Motherfucker said Rashid.
Balls.
Biden directly addresses Rashida Tlaib, and from my heart, dude, hearts and prayers, dude. R.I.P. to your grandma, but I'm different, dude. I fucking, hearts and prayers for your grandma, dude, but, sorry. It's gonna happen, you know? Hearts and prayers to your grandma. Oh, she's still alive? Okay, not for too long. You know what I'm saying? Because we just gave $735 million worth of weapons to the occupying force that is brutally occupying your grandmother's existence. So hearts and prayers. Remember when I used to make fun of how Joe Biden calls you up? You're gonna fucking, you're on your last leg. This is it. You have 2 years. Ted Cruz is a freak. What else is new? Oh my God. 111 Texans died during the winter storm. Ted Cruz fled with his ill-fated trip to Cancun. Awesome. Excited to travel again. This airline can hook you up with cheap flights to sunny Cancun or even Las Vegas. What a fucking freak, dude. Here.
Hopefully without a flame war. Yeah, big ask, Mr. Green. I mean, that fight goes back thousands and thousands of years. Except thousands of years ago, there wasn't an Islam yet, so yeah, no. Also, let me submit that very little of this conflict between Israel and Palestine over the last several decades has been about, theological differences between Islam and Judaism. No one's arguing about whether the most important prophets descended from Abraham's son Isaac or his son Ishmael, right? It's not about whether to fast during Yom Kippur or Ramadan. It's about land. Portraying the conflict as eternal or as religious makes it feel intractable in a way that frankly it isn't. So instead, let's begin as most historians do in the late 19th century. And instead of talking about religion, let's follow the lead of historians like James Gelvin and discuss competing nationalisms. Okay, so in the late 19th century, the Ottoman Empire ruled over what we now know as Palestine. The population there, according to Ottoman records from 1878, was 87% Muslim, 10% Christian, and 3% Jewish. Everybody spoke Arabic as the daily language, and in Jerusalem, the religious populations were roughly equal. To give you a sense of life in Ottoman Palestine, an Arab Orthodox Christian musician named Wasif Jaharia grew up in Jerusalem in the first decade of the 20th century, learning the Quran in school and celebrating both Passover Passover and Eid with his Jewish and Muslim neighbors. Ottoman Palestine was, in short, a place in which people of different religious faiths lived peacefully together. All right, let's go to the thought bubble. The late 19th century was the golden age of nationalism in Europe, and no place was crazier than the Habsburg Austro-Hungarian Empire, in which at least 10 different nations all wanted their own state. And in that hyper-nationalistic empire lived a Jewish journalist named Theodor Herzl, who had hoped that Jews could assimilate into European nations, but soon became convinced that the Jewish people needed to leave Europe and settle in their own...
Oh, did I miss the fucking Abdul Hamid mention? Did I miss the Ottoman mention of a free Palestine where Jews, Christians, and Muslims alike used to live together in harmony, or did he...
state. The concept of Jewish nationalism came to be known as Zionism. It's important to keep in mind that most Zionists were secular Jews, so they imagined Israel as a state for Jews more than a Jewish state. In 1917, the British government, hoping to gain the support of Jewish people, issued the Balfour Declaration, promising, quote, the establishment in Palestine of a national home for the Jewish people. A bold promise considering that Palestine was still technically Ottoman, as they hadn't yet lost World War I. Of course, they would soon, but it turned out that the British were over-promisers when it came to Palestine, because a year before the Balfour Declaration, the British had secretly promised the French that they would divide up the Arab territories and the Brits would keep Palestine. Furthermore, in 1915, other British officials had promised the ruler of Mecca, Sharif Hussein, that he would rule over an Arab state, including Palestine, if he led an Arab revolt against Ottoman rule, which Hussein promptly did. So basically,
and GG's, yeah,
the Brits
Arabs
had promised Palestine to the Meccans, to themselves, and to the Zionists. What could go wrong? Thanks, Thought Bubble. So shortly after the end of the war, the British established a colony in Palestine with the idea that they'd...
Listen, dude, hey, you trusted the Brits, boys.
...rule until the Palestinians were ready to govern themselves. At which point the people living in Palestine were like, well, now seems good. And the British were like, yeah, but maybe not just yet. Meanwhile, the British established separate...
This whole thing is Turkey's fault? You literally cannot say that. There's plenty that the Ottoman Empire and Turkey did wrong, especially in the inception of Turkey. Obviously, Armenian genocide. That's a pretty solid one that comes to mind. The dealings of the Ottoman Empire, as it pertains to historic Palestine, is not one of those things. Like literally, not one of those things. Siding with Germany in World War I. A mistake that was not repeated, luckily, in World War II. So those are... Couldn't even win a war. If you ask... the way that this is taught in Turkish schools, and I will tell you this, is that... And it's technically true. The Ottoman Empire won all of the active battles that it was engaged in, and yet still, as a consequence of siding with the losers in World War I, Germany, had to cede land and give up land regardless. This is how it's taught in schools. I mean, it is also, that's not even untrue for the record, but I'm from Jordan. All I was fed while I was young is that the Ottoman Empire was a colonial power. What? I mean, but that's true. It was a colonial. It was an empire, dude. Look at this. What do you think this is? It was. Of course it was. Like, that's correct. You haven't been fed falsehoods. That is true. Of course it was a fucking colonial power. In the same, like, there's distinctions between the Ottoman Empire in comparison to British colonies. Very significant distinctions. But it's still an empire. It is an imperial power. It's not a colonial power technically, but it's still an imperial. Ottomans lost tons of battles, yes, but not all of it is discussed.
Separate institutions for Christians, Jews, and Muslims.
There's a reason why we talk about Gallipoli more than anything else in Turkish schools, okay? There's a reason why the most you hear about is Gallipoli. Çanakkale. İçilmez. Çanakkale. Okay, I'm gonna stop. which I suspect is also taught in Australian and schools in New Zealand. Big battle. So big that the Anzacs, like Australians and people from New Zealand, will still come to Turkey to pay respects to those who passed away. Like, and it's a somber reminder of I guess British colonialism still technically, that they forced them to go and fight battles for the Queen and King. And die in an otherwise like unwinnable ground war or invasion. Yeah, Anzac Day is what it's called. By the way, if you want Indians to be taught in British schools, you're a radical anti-British communist. Just skip over all British colonialism. Wait, really?
For Palestinian Christians and Muslims to cooperate, and easier for the British to, quote, divide and rule the inhabitants of Palestine. Again, what could go wrong? Meanwhile, the British did attempt to honor the Balfour Declaration's promise to, quote, facilitate Jewish immigration under...
For some reason, conservative Muslims love glorifying the Ottomans, even though they had concubines, slaves, etc. I don't get it. Conservative Muslims are taught that the Ottoman Empire was a force of power, which is true. They were very mighty. Okay, it was a very powerful empire. So they just focus on the power aspect there and not focus on the homosexuality, the hedonism, and also the tolerance in many ways that was demonstrated in the Ottoman Empire, which if current leaders expressed right now, they would be like, that's fucking unacceptable. Like, absolutely unacceptable. Mighty not by Western standards? Mighty absolutely by Western standards. What the fuck are you talking about? What? Motherfucker, literally, that's insane, okay? What the fuck, dude? People are like, yeah, what's next, dude? Was the fucking golden age of Islam actually not golden but bronze? Is that what you're gonna say? No, dude. The fucking Muslim nations literally were never civilized, okay? In any meaningful capacity. They were always fucking backwards. They were always war-torn. Like, here, just inject more fucking copium into your veins, dude. This is some straight-up fucking Orientalist bullshit, by the way, which is taught all the goddamn time in Western schools, I assume. No. They were always fucking bad. They were, oh, God. They were never mighty. Oh, it's only America and Western colonial powers. Eurocentric education is showing again. Yeah, it's just all the way to Austria. The Ottomans took over nearly the entirety of Eastern Europe, all the way to fucking Austria. At which point they were expelled and purged. The empire was vast, too vast, and it was so large that it was nearly impossible for it to survive or continue surviving. Turkey is the antithesis of European colonialization. That's why they hate you. They didn't hold it. They lost literally hard in Vienna. Yes, that's what I'm saying. The gates of Vienna is where the Ottomans were purged. I don't know why, like, anyone would literally consider this something that they did. Bitch, you sit in your underwear, in your fucking, wherever the fuck you are right now, in your Iowa basement, like, pontificating about the glories of the fucking winged hussars. That's not you, okay? You're just a idiotic reactionary in Ohio. Or in fucking whatever European country, by the way, because a lot of Europeans like will always bring this shit up. Okay? It's so weird, like, yeah, we did that. We did that. Okay, bro, you didn't do shit, and neither did I, by the way. Anyway. When I grew up in Taiwan, they just thought that the Ottoman Empire was basically Chinese anyway, since they inherited from the Mongols. So, which are Chinese by osmosis. So the funny thing is, like in Turkish schools, that's what we learn, but that they're Turks. So I guess everyone kind of rips on how like the Mongolian Empire is like technically low-key Turk, or technically low-key Chinese, I guess, which is hilarious because like I think saying that like they're Chinese is a little bit more ridiculous than saying that they're Turkic, because the Turkic population made up a pretty solid fucking sizable force, and they were also nomadic and from the same area and literally fought the Chinese. So I don't know why Han Chinese are not Turkish. I never said that. I just find it funny that everyone takes ownership over like what they consider to be like a cool thing throughout history that was a very long time ago. Think about what you said about Ohio. Go Buckeyes, dude. Conservative Muslims love the Ottoman Empire because it was a caliphate and applied Sharia laws. Yeah, dude. Very loosely, for the record. The caliphate at that point was just a symbol of control rather than like a real demonstration of like Islamic values. Unless, again, you consider fucking dudes in the ass a big demonstration of Sharia law and Islamic values.
Under suitable conditions. Between 1920 and 1939, the Jewish population of Palestine increased by over 320,000 people. In fact, by 1938, Jews were just under 30% of the population of Palestine. And the growing Jewish population focused on purchasing land from absentee non-Palestinian Arab landowners and then evicting Palestinian farmers who were living and working there. By controlling both the land and the labor, they hoped to establish a more secure community within Palestine. But of course, these practices heightened tensions between Jewish people and Arab Palestinians during the 1920s and 1930s. Along the way, Palestinian Arabs began to think of themselves as the Palestinian nation, and that growing sense of nationalism erupted in 1936 when the Palestinians revolted against the British. With the help of Jewish militias, the British brutally suppressed the Palestinian revolt, but in the aftermath, the British issued a white paper limiting Jewish immigration to Palestine and calling for the establishment of a joint Arab and Jewish
Yo, low-key, this is kind of fair. I'm surprised. I guess I shouldn't be surprised, but
Jewish state in Palestine within 10 years. This managed to leave no one happy. The Zionists were angry at Britain for limiting Jewish immigration at a time when Jews particularly needed to leave Europe, and the Arab Palestinians were unhappy about the prospect of waiting 10 years for a state. And then came World War II, which was actually quite a peaceful time in Palestine. But then it ended and tensions resumed, and the British realized that colonies like Palestine were far more...
Was Jewish immigration into Palestine a bad thing before 1948? Yes. Did you not hear what he's talking about? Jewish immigration originally into Palestine started with good intentions, but then when it got to a point where Jewish people in Palestine made up 30% of the population, he literally just mentioned that they started forcibly evicting the Arabs that were living on the land that was sold to Jewish people. Like, they were expelled and pushed away. So then it started to become a point of conflict. And once that happened, once those evictions started occurring, and once those expulsions started occurring, then the British were like, oh shit, we fucked up. We should limit immigration. We should limit some of this Jewish immigration into Palestine. But nothing, all of that still pales in comparison to post 48.
Trouble than they were worth, so they handed the issue of Palestine over to the newly created United Nations. They were like, oh, hey there, United Nations, for your first problem. So in November of 1947, the United Nations voted to partition